Thank you for joining us at Motion Sidekick. Today, we're going to be taking a look at this 2D text and exploding it out to 3D text, along with a 3D camera. Let's get started. Thank you for joining us today. Let's go ahead and get started. First thing we want to do is go to New Composition. Let's make a 1920 by 1080 at 30 frames a second, and let's make this about 10 seconds here. The color doesn't really matter for now, so go ahead and click OK. Select your text tool here, click on your screen, and let's type out the word animate. Now, because we want to animate the dot on the eye, let's actually make the I a lowercase I. Select this layer, and then we want to center it on the screen. So hit center there and center there. And then duplicate this layer by hitting Command D. Double click on the layer and type out a capital A. Now, this is getting lost here, so let's go ahead and hit T for opacity under the animate layer, and then let's just bump that down just so we can see what's going on here. All right, now this is the text layer that we're going to turn into a 3D. Now we have to break it up into all the individual characters of this word, so that way we can animate all these different letters independently from each other, right? So we want to go ahead and select the 3D layer option here. Now, as soon as you do that, you'll see some other options come up over on the left or on the right hand side of your screen here. Under advanced, actually by default, this is going to be classic 3D. Switch that over to advanced, and what that's going to do is give you a geometry options under extrusion depth. For this tutorial, let's go ahead and make this 40. Now what that does is actually give some shape to your letter. So if we go back to the selection tool, we can rotate this letter and you can see that it has some depth. Now one thing you'll notice is that it's rotating on the front face of that letter, and we don't want that. We want it to rotate from the middle. So with your anchor point tool selected, make sure you enable snapping, and then you want to move that up, switch over to your left camera view, and then you want to move that over to the left. So now it's going to be rotating from the middle. Let's go back to our active camera. So hit Option P for position, hit R for rotation, and then go ahead and set a keyframe for X, Y, and Z. Go ahead and hit P for position again. And let's move this where it's actually going to start here. And that's why we left that other layer there to give us the reference on the spacing. Whoop. Not scale. P, position. And so you want to set that there. So now that we have that in place, and we just want to replicate that process for all the letters of the word here. So let me go ahead and do that real quick. So hit Command D for duplicate, double click to select the text, type in a capital N, hit P for position, and then slide that over. And we'll replicate that process for the rest of the letters. Great, now that we have all our letters here, let's go ahead and select all the text layers. Hit U twice to bring up your animated keyframes. Let's go ahead and go to the 2-minute mark here and copy and paste all those keyframes. And then what we want to do, let's zoom out and set our ending point for the animation here when the letters blow up. So I know I want it to come towards the camera, so let's go ahead and do negative 1200. Ooh, negative 2000. Oh, that's maybe a little much. Let's go negative 1500. Negative, yeah, that looks about right. Let's go negative 1500. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy, and then I'm just going to paste it to the Z value of the position of all the rest of the letters. So now we have our starting position, end position, and at the end position, we want these letters to rotate. So go ahead and just rotate these a little bit. It doesn't have to be any which way, just whatever you think looks good. Just make them kind of sporadic. It's an explosion after all, so you want a little bit of chaos here. Again, no rhyme or reason as to why I'm rotating these the way I am. So do that for all the letters. Let's go ahead and take a look and see what that looks like. Great. Let's go ahead and take our starting position, copy all those. Let's go to about 4 seconds here, and let's go ahead and paste all those so that way we have a starting point, a landing point, and a return point. Now, you can see that it's not very dynamic. It's a little stale. So let's spice it up a little bit. So with the rotation, you'll notice that you have certain degrees on the rotation here. But if we want to add 1 to these degrees, what that's going to do is 1 times. So it's going to flip it around 1 entire time. So let's go ahead and add a 1 randomly to a bunch of these X rotations, or any rotations really. And you'll see what it does here in a second. Let's take a look. See all that rotation that we now have? And all we did was just to add 1 to the rotation. So it just added 360 degrees to whatever degrees was on here. Okay, now that we've added some extra rotation to this, go ahead and take a look at your animation. If you're happy with that, again, this is just pretty random on my part. I'm just sticking in numbers there. Let's take a look at the M, because I feel like M, see how it's a little bit off there? Let's go ahead and type that, zero that back out, and then go back to the N keyframe here, and it's probably the same here. Let's zero that out. Let's go ahead and grab all our keyframes here, and then make sure you grab all your letters. So we have A all the way down to E. Hit F9 for easy ease. Go into your graph editor. Make sure that you are under the edit speed graph. Select that middle keyframe there. Drag out your handles towards the outer edges. And what this is doing is saying, hey, the animation is going to start off slow, speed up real quick, and then slow back down almost to a standstill. And then it's going to speed up again real fast and then slow all the way back down. Let's go back to our regular timeline here. Let's preview that and we'll see what happens here. That looks great. I'm going to copy these keyframes here in the middle. Copy those. I'm just going to paste them in again right here just because I want this animation to come to a full complete stop and then go back in. And I want that to go back in a little bit faster than what it's doing now. So I'm going to grab those end keyframes and push them down the timeline just a little bit. And let's preview that one more time. Perfect. So at the end of the keyframes here, if you want to push J, will take you to the previous keyframe. K will take you to the next keyframe. When you're on that last keyframe and you have all your text layers selected, if you hit Option close bracket, that's going to trim those layers to the playhead. Let's grab those and scoot them down the timeline. What we're going to do now is we're going to animate the eye on the animate. Let's bring this opacity back up to full force. Let's bring it back up to 100%. Click off that keyframe and grab your ellipse tool. Let's zoom in so we can see what we're doing. If you hit Command, click and drag, that will drag out your circle from the middle of the circle. And then if you hit Command and double click on this anchor point tool, that'll center your anchor point on that shape. So let's go back to the beginning here. Option P to set a position keyframe, and then Option S to set a scale keyframe. Let's go forward about 1.5 frames, or I'm sorry, 1.5 seconds. Let's bump this all the way up. I can't even see it anymore. And then it's going to go all the way down to here where the 3D animation starts. And then we're going to copy and paste those keyframes there. Let's go ahead and zoom back out so we can see what this is doing. So when it gets to the top of the arc, what we want to do here, just to go back to some animation principles, the squish and stretch principle. So what we want to do is select this, go back to your selection tool, and then we're going to stretch this. So now it has that cartoon effect where it stretches at the top of the arc, slows down, and then it's going to come back down. And to slow it down at the top of the arc, go ahead and select those keyframes, hit F9 for easy ease. Go back into your graph editor by hitting that button. And then same thing here. Same thing here. You want to go ahead and drag out those handles towards the opposite ends. And you're going to see that it does this effect. That looks pretty good. And let's just play with the timing here just a little bit. So it's going to go all the way up and then back down. And you see that it's offset a little bit, right? Like this is not equidistant from the beginning to the end, right? So the theory behind that is that it's going to take a lot more force to go up. And then with gravity, that's going to speed it back down to its end point. So once we get to the end, let's go ahead and do that trick again with Option close bracket. That'll trim that layer. And then we also want to trim the animate 2D layer. So Option close bracket. If you hit page down on your keyboard, that'll take you to the next frame. Select your 3D layers and then move those forward holding the shift key, and that'll snap it to your playhead. Let's go to fit so we can see what we're doing. Now go to the end of this. So again, remember your J and K buttons. That'll take you to the last keyframe. Hit N, and that'll change your preview bar. That'll be the end of your preview bar. So now when you hit spacebar, it's only going to preview that area and ignore this other area. So let's take a look and see what we have. That's looking really good. I think the dot on the eye is still a little slow, so let's speed that up just a little bit. Let's take a look at what that feels like. That looks great. Let's speed this, the coming down portion of it just a little bit more. Let's hit J and K for your, go to your keyframes. Option close bracket. Option close bracket. Page down to go to the next frame. Select all your keyframes, hold down shift, and move it to your playhead. Hit K for your next keyframe, and then hit N for your preview area, hit spacebar. That's looking really good. The only problem now is if you zoom in, you can see the problem I'm seeing here is that it hits, and right away that should go to the 3D layers, but it's not because it's still that flat 2D animation. So let's go ahead and go back one frame, hit Option. Oh. Let's select that layer, hit Option close bracket. That'll take it back down. It'll trim it down to the playhead. Same with that. Let's select all your keyframes and then let's bump those up. Just one. Perfect. Okay, so the reason why that looks a little clunky is because this animation now, let's go ahead and refine that. Select the speed graph so you see how it's slow and then speeds up. So that's what we're seeing there. So let's go ahead and drag this all the way over here. So now as soon as that dot lands, it's going to go fast, slow down, and land. And we also want to do the same thing here because as soon as it's almost like it's crashing back into place. So let's try that. That's looking pretty good. Now, what I'm noticing here, and I don't know if it's just an optical illusion, but I almost see a drop shadow hanging out down here as the animate comes on. So let's maybe build that in. Let's try adding a go up to layer, new light. Let's go ahead and make this an environment light and make sure that the cast shadows option is clicked on. Let's bump that up to the top. And let's rename this layer just to keep things organized. Let's name it iDot. And that's not the newest iPhone product. It's just we're just naming it iDot. All right, let's move on. So we also now, because we created this light, let's go ahead and stop this. Because we created this light, you can see the drop shadows within the 3D text, which is looking kind of cool, right? It's not casting a shadow down here because we have no floor. So let's go ahead and put in a floor. So let's go to layer, new, solid. And let's just make that orange. Why not? Just so we can see the difference here. Now that we have that solid in there, let's go ahead and make that 3D and then rotate it. Let's go ahead and rotate this on the X rotation. And let's go about there. And then let's put this down here. And then we're also going to scale this up just so we're not seeing the edges of this. And there we go. You see the floor there. Yeah, that looks great. So now I don't want it to have this weird yellow and orange line. So let's go ahead and go to layer and create new solid. And once again, the same orange. Let's go ahead and click OK. And then let's bring that down underneath all our layers. That's going to be our true background. So now we don't see that seam, right? So it's all one solid color. Let's take a look here. And that's looking really good. So one last thing I want to try to do just to push this animation just even a little farther. Let's add a camera. Let's make this a 35mm camera. Click OK. Now, we don't want it to animate during the 2D portion of this. We want the camera to animate on the 3D portion of it. So toggle this down for, oops, sorry, that's the light. Where'd the camera go? Oh, there it is. Let's move this all the way up to the top again, just to keep it organized. Hit Command A to select all your layers. And usually what I do is I hit L for levels. And this will just kind of collapse all those keyframes and give you a nice, fresh, clean look at all your layers so you see what's going on. So let's go ahead and select camera, toggle this down under transform. Let's hit a keyframe for point of interest and position. And then we also want to set those same keyframes at the end of the animation. So let's go ahead and click these little guys right here to set keyframes at the end of the animation. And then let's toggle one of these down. So I actually want to go to the middle of these keyframes here. This is where our animated 3D text stops. And I think this is where we want the camera to kind of slow down and then go back to its original keyframe position here. So here, let's if you hit C on your keyboard, this will cycle through the camera modes. Remember from our last tutorial, this is your zoom, this is your orbit, and this is your pan around. So what we want to do is hit C, and it'll just cycle through those. And we want to orbit. So click on the M, just so we orbit around the M. And just ever so slightly click and drag your mouse. Don't let go of it, because as soon as you let go of it, that's where it's going to set. Let's hit C again on your keyboard and then cycle through these. We want to get this zoom icon, and then let's zoom out just a little bit and see how it's off-centered just a little bit. Hit C again to cycle through those modes, and let's just pan over to get this centered. Great. Let's do F9 just to ease those keyframes, and let's take a preview. Let's take a look and see what we got. The only thing I'm seeing, guys, is we've animated this dot on this side, but we still have the dot on that eye. So let's go ahead and get rid of that. So go back to your animate layer. With the animate layer selected, go to your ellipse tool. Let's zoom in here just a little bit. If you remember, hit Command, and that'll draw it out from the middle. Double click on the side of this mask, and that way you can move that mask around. Now this is the opposite of what we want. So what we go to mask, if you don't see it, select that and then hit M for mask. And under this menu, instead of add, go to subtract. And that's going to subtract what's inside that mask. So let's go ahead and zoom back out here, preview the animation. You know, one thing I noticed, guys, is that E is lagging behind for some reason. So let's take a look and see what's going on here. Hit U and then U again. You'll see all your keyframes. It looks like they're all set to the right point in time. So select those keyframes, hit Command, and then hold down Command and click on that keyframe. That'll reset it back to its original keyframe. Let's do an easy ease. So F9. Go back to that keyframe. And now, with that keyframe selected, you can go ahead and click and drag all the way over. And we'll probably have to do the same thing here with the send keyframe. So select all those keyframes, Command, click on them just to reset them. F9 will turn them back into easy ease. Go back to your graph editor, pull that slider back over. Perfect. And let's take a look now at the animation. And there you go, guys. If you like the animation, you like what you see, hit that like button and drop a comment below. Let me know if you prefer tutorials faster than a speeding bullet, or if you're here for the full origin backstory, the monologue, everything, the lore. You know, I can drag these out if you want me to. Once again, I'm Julio, your motion sidekick, here to guide you on your motion quest.